Hello, scholars, and welcome to weeks 11 and 12 of Applying Philosophy to Modern Global Issues. I hope you've had a great break, got a chance to get some rest during this busy fall semester. We have 4 weeks left in the course, and I hope you'll get psyched to finish strongly. During the upcoming week, we will turn our attention to an international issue at the forefront of public attention: immigration and the plight of refugees. During the second week of this unit, we'll start brainstorming ideas for your final project. So let's get started. In the past 2 years, the Western world has witnessed a marked change in its public attitude toward the plight of refugees. First, European countries started closing their borders to waves of refugees fleeing the brutal civil war in Syria. Then European countries closed their borders to African migrants who had trekked from drought-ridden and war-torn countries in sub-Saharan Africa to Libya, and then risked all in overcrowded boats pointed towards Italy and then Spain. In 2016, English voters, fearing dilution of their national sovereignty, chose to begin the process of withdrawal from the European Union. Brexit was just a harbinger of the political sea change which swept America during the summer of 2016, bringing Donald Trump's anti-immigrant, pro-isolationist policies to power. In Poland and Austria, and now Hungary and Italy, right-wing authoritarian parties were elected. In France, the right-wing candidate Marine Le Pen made it to the final round of the presidential election before losing to the centrist party led by Emmanuel Macron. And just last week, a past member of Brazil's military dictatorship was elected president. These changes represent a marked retreat from the global vision which had animated many in the West in the years following the fall of the Soviet Union. The hope was that a globalizing economy would raise millions of people in developing countries out of poverty. Although industrial jobs would be lost in Europe and America, the prospect of a vast new markets made up of rising middle-class consumers in China, India, Indonesia, and around the world would spur the world economy to new heights of productivity. International institutions led by the European Union and the United Nations would join the United States in negotiating disputes between nations diplomatically and bringing war criminals and mass murderers to justice no matter where they might be. Sadly, international events have blunted the movement toward this vision of a just international order. Russia's seizure of the Crimea and its war in Ukraine have been tolerated by the international community. The rise of ISIS's terrorist caliphate in Iraq and the unending spectacle of civil war in Syria shocked the world with its violence and barbarity. The specter of North Korean nuclear attack unnerves the Far East. It seems like many citizens in the West have thrown up their hands and turned their backs on the problems which face poor people around the world. We've turned our gaze inward and now long for a return to an earlier, simpler time. Make America Great Again. In Warsaw, during 2016, President Trump gave a speech celebrating the Christian values of the Polish people. He called on the West to find the courage to save itself from the alien threats facing it, the invasion of its borders by people who profess different religions and possess different skin colors. But this parochial us versus them vision of the world's future denies the real challenges which face the world in coming years. At the head of the list stands the problem of climate change. The vast numbers of people on the move are being driven less by political impression than by the environmental forces resulting from climate change. Drought in the Middle East and Africa, rising sea levels in Indonesia and Bangladesh, violent storms in the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico, forest fires in California. We're just beginning to feel the impact of the warming climate on international relations. The mass migration of peoples around the world is certain to accelerate in the coming decades. How will we respond? It might be helpful at this point to look back at the history of refugee relief during the second half of the 20th century and glean what wisdom we can from the experience diplomacy has gained from resolving previous refugees' emergencies. In that way, perhaps we can avoid having our moral intelligence distracted by calls for revenge and sweeping judgments about what is to be done about the desperate situation of the poor. Sergio de Vieira Mello was a Brazilian-born United Nations diplomat for more than 34 years, earning respect and praise around the world for his efforts in the humanitarian and political programs of the United Nations. Sergio had an inspired career. He represented the UN in hotspots around the world from the early 70s to his death in Iraq in 2003. Sergio served in Bangladesh during its 1971 War of Liberation. He mediated between the Greeks and the Turks in their violent struggle over Cyprus in 1974 and 75. He negotiated transfers of hostages and refugees from Perón's Peru in 1978. He was the first Western diplomat to hold direct meetings with the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia after the genocide of the mid-70s. In 1993, Sergio facilitated negotiations with the Bosnian Serb leader Radovan Karadzic to exchange prisoners and thus slow genocide during the Balkan conflict. In 1996, he was in Rwanda and Burundi negotiating the return of refugees after the genocide there. He led the UN government which launched democracy in East Timor after it gained independence in 1999. And Sergio was killed in the first major terrorist attack after the US conquest of Baghdad in 2003. Sergio's example has since inspired many colleagues and students, including the ambassador to the UN under President Obama, Samantha Powers. Perhaps the lessons of peacekeeping that Sergio learned can be applied to the current situations in America, Europe, and Southeast Asia. But nativist and nationalist voices are sounding louder and louder. How can we apply reason to a situation which is rapidly spinning out of control? How did Sergio do it in hotspots around the world? During the first week of this unit, you will look more closely at one of the episodes from Sergio's amazing career and create a presentation for the class about it. Or you can research one of the refugee hotspots around the world today and explore ways that Sergio might try to reconcile the situation peacefully. During our second week, we'll begin the process of brainstorming to find a topic for your final project. Maybe you've been waiting all semester for an opportunity to explore a topic. Well, your chance is coming. Maybe you want to go back and explore a topic in more detail that we've touched on in an earlier unit. For this project, we hope to put together all of the online skills you've been practicing. You can collaborate with a classmate or two. You'll explore both sides of your issue. You'll vet your sources thoroughly. You'll use Aristotle's rhetorical modes, ethos, pathos, and logos, to create a clearly articulated and persuasive argument which maybe can bridge the partisan divide. And we'll strive to create presentations that are user-friendly and welcome your viewer to explore your topic in more detail. Our goal is to produce presentations which are worthy of publication on the public internet. More on the final project later. For now, please take the time to explore the career of Sergio de Vieira Mello and learn more about how his rules of diplomacy are more relevant than ever in our world today. Thank you. I'll see you all online, and please be sure to ask me questions if you have any questions or concerns. Have a good one.